What's up, everybody? This is Ricardo Rodriguez.
And Matthew Messick.
And this is
the Profits Over Wages podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Profits Over Wages podcast, where we do weekly interviews with highly successful business owners and entrepreneurs. We discuss life, business, and entrepreneurship to bring forward the lessons learned from success and failure, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. On episode 41, we sit down with Tamiel Kenney. Tammy is a full-time real estate investor, apartment syndicator, 3-time Amazon bestselling author, mother of 2, and co-founder of Think Multifamily. Tammy has partnered with her husband Mark to purchase over 3,500 apartment units and educates others in apartment investing through conferences and coaching. They're actually hosting the Fire Summit conference in Dallas, Texas this upcoming September 22nd and 23rd. So if you're in the area, definitely check them out. All right, now on to what you'll get out of this episode. We go in depth on what a syndicator is and what they do, the team that it takes to get a multifamily deal done, and Tammy gives us insight on how her and her husband have accumulated over 3,500 units. We also talk about how and why they decided to start coaching new investors, the do's and don'ts of marketing for investors on social media, and she gives us a sneak peek into her upcoming book about apartment investing from the passive investor's point of view. Enjoy the show. We are live now, and we're actually coming to you guys from Philadelphia. We are at a podcasting conference, and we met Tammy here, who specializes in syndication. You do seminars, you're writing a book. Welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For those people who are not familiar with who you are, if you can kind of just give us like a little bit of background, like who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of get started onto the podcast after that.
Sure. So my full name is Tamiel Kenney. And my husband and I run a company called Think Multifamily. Think Multifamily acquires large multifamily, 100 units plus, B and C class assets. That's the slightly older to a little bit more older assets that have some value add component. We also run an educational company where we teach investors how to invest either passively into apartments or how to go out and buy their own apartments or how to syndicate apartments. Syndication simply means go and group purchase apartments to be able to buy something bigger than you would be able to buy on your own.
Right. So, I mean, multifamily is something that we've looked at in the past, and when we looked at it, there was 8 moving pieces to every deal, right? So to kind of break down the basics and all the the different tasks that there is to do, you have a syndicator, you have a credit partner, you got a money partner, you got an equity partner, property manager, and all that. Can you break that down of how many actual partners is it that you need to do a multifamily deal?
Yeah, it definitely takes a team, right? So, and again, there's multiple sides to it. If you are going to be the only sponsor of the deal, you are the one who's going to go out and find the deal, and you have all the money, the equity to bring to the table yourself. Let's just assume you're going to be a Lone Ranger. You're going to leverage the other maybe 70 to 80% of the overall project costs. So if your property is, let's just say $4 million, the bank might give you $2.5 or $3 million. You need to raise the other $1 million. They may or may not give you the other money for rehab, so you'll just kind of have to see if you also need to raise that money as well or if it's rolled into the loan. In addition to finding a bank or a mortgage broker to work with, you also need to meet a property management company that you know, like, and trust, and that they have good references and don't necessarily go with the cheapest property management company because they've given you a really good budget.
Right, as contractors, right? You don't want to go with the cheapest guy.
Exactly. Sometimes the saying is true that you get what you pay for. So just keep that in mind with that. You also need your syndication attorney and a title attorney. There's just a bunch of players in it. You need to basically make sure you understand if you're raising money, if you're not bringing your own $1 million to the table and you're going to go out and try to find passive investors, you need to make sure you understand the PPM or the private placement memorandum documents that you're going to be presenting to your passive investors. And you also want to make sure your passive investors are educated about your deal fully.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing that, when we first got into multifamily was that it's just, it's a whole new animal, right? Like we're used to just doing like single family flips, and it's like you could do it on your own if you wanted to. You know?
You could. It's definitely smaller scale. My husband and I started with 1 to 4 units at a time. We built up to about 13 to 15 units over a period of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so let's talk about those early days, because that's usually what people are most interested in. Because it's like you can say, yeah, sure, you know, we have 5,000 units, but it's like, how the hell did you get there?
Yeah.
So let's talk about like those early days. Like, where did you, because you're in Dallas now, right? But you had mentioned that you had started maybe like Michigan, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So let's talk about those early days.
Yeah, so we grew up in Michigan, and we once Mark and I got married in 95, so long ago. It's like half a lifetime ago, right? Once we got married, or I'm sorry, just before we got married, he had bought his first duplex with his identical twin brother. I don't know, honestly, if they were just before they graduated college or just after, but they started working on that. Right after we got married, we started buying more. We bought a triplex, another duplex, a quad, a single-family house. And it was just kind of fun.
Were these like, where you get them with like hard money and then refi out of them? Or
you know,
was it cash?
His hometown, and this was so long ago, his hometown was so cheap. So we were just getting a loan and then paying for the down payment with our own cash.
So it was all like conventional stuff?
Yeah, just regular conventional. And that's really all you can get with a small multifamily or residential. They're looking at your credit, and you're capped out on how many loans like that the bank will give you. Honestly, I don't know what it was like back then as far as how many mortgages they would give you as an investor versus now. I was so young back then. I think I was 20 when we got married, so I was just going along with whatever my husband was doing, and it was fun and exciting. And one of the things that we did, of course, that we didn't like were the evictions, where you have this family that's in one of your units and they decide to stop paying. Well, you might be in a market that's not very landlord friendly.
Is Michigan pretty
now
friendly?
It depends on the city.
Okay, because so Chicago is just
not at all
pro tenant, just across the board. Like we bought a building, and like immediately, like the tenant's just like, fuck it, we're not gonna pay anymore.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
They're like, we don't care.
You get these tenants who get professional at that. They know how to get in for no money down, and they just kind of screw you, and then they'll go from apartment to apartment to apartment, playing the game and living for free.
I think you know which story I just thought about? One time, one of our buildings, I think we sold that one already, but Matt went to collect rent, and I believe that the girl pretended to be like a twin sister.
Oh my god!
And she's like,
no, I found out later that she was a twin, and I couldn't at first I couldn't tell if she was playing me or she was a twin. She goes, "Oh yeah, I don't know my
like you imagine showing up and you ask for rent, and she's like,
I don't live here. I'm just here to watch the kids."
It's like, what? Like, you're either like a really good con artist and you're trying to trick me right now, you actually have a twin sister.
I know, it's crazy.
Definitely.
So yeah, some people get like so good at it that it's crazy.
Well,
but anyway.
We even had a tenant tell us, or I'm sorry, they told another tenant who told us that they didn't think we needed the money, the rent, because it was just extra money in our pocket.
What does it have to do with them?
And just in their mind, that was a rationale for not having to pay rent, because we didn't really need it.
But that's why I bought this building, because I can.
That's right. Like, if they don't pay their rent, that rent money to the bank has to come from somewhere, and it comes from our hard-earned money and our 9-to-5 jobs.
Right.
So that got to be really frustrating.
So you guys started slowly, you got 1,
we
then
did.
2, then 3, then 4.
We did.
Okay, and then how did that transition happen? Like, because you moved to Dallas right after that?
We did. We moved to Dallas in 99. When we moved to Dallas originally, we bought 2 single-family new builds, and we rented those out. But my husband was still working a lot of hours at the time, and I didn't have the confidence that I needed to manage them on my own. So once the houses flipped after the first year of tenants, I just didn't really know how to do the lease ups or handle any of that on my own. So we just decided to sell those, and then we had no real estate for a while.
What's your guys' background? Like, what did your husband do? He doesn't have a full-time job anymore?
He doesn't. We do real estate investing full-time now. He had an IT degree. He was a CPA as well. He had his own IT company for a while. He was doing very well with that. But he was working way too many hours. And if anything ever happened to him, we kind of needed something for our family to fall back on. We needed passive income, right?
Of course.
So my background, before we get into the passive income conversation, my background is as a registered nurse. I also did executive admin work, and I worked, maybe 15 years for a Christian medical mission team. I went overseas a few times. I didn't want to be gone on all the missions because I don't want to be away from my family too much because they're long trips, right? I went to Nigeria a couple times and Guatemala, and I would love to go back. That's exciting, and I like being busy when I'm away doing the medical missions, right? You're working sun up to past sundown, and I like feeling valuable at that time, needed, like I'm serving.
No, definitely. That's awesome. So now let's move into the whole passive income situation.
Yeah. So we started doing large apartments maybe about 5 years ago. Our friend who was doing syndication of apartments at the time asked us if we wanted to be one of his passive investors on his deal. And because my husband and I both at that time knew we needed something else, we had lost a lot of money in the stock market in the 2008 crash. We knew we had to do something else. We had to pull all of our money out of the stocks and put it back into real estate because at least we understood real estate. It's a tangible asset, and it's not going to disappear in a day.
Right. People are going to need somewhere to live.
That's right. That's right. So we invested in his deal passively. We both at separate times took a multifamily conference course, and then we signed up to learn from somebody for a little while. I think we took us about a year to go after our own syndication, our own deal. So we started off as a passive, and then it took us about a year to kind of find our own deal and get in a groove. So during that year process, we were trying to develop a luxury neighborhood in Texas, and then working with the city isn't always easy. It was a small country city that was really, really growing. And right across the street, they had 1 acre lots. And we were trying to make 1 acre lots in this 22 acre plot, and the city wasn't allowing it. They were trying to still keep it very country, 1.5 to 2 acres. So it just didn't make financial sense to us. Then we were also trying to develop a storage unit facility in a great location right down the street from where we live now. But the project got so big and it was going to take all the cash we had, and we got really nervous. And it was just going to be us with really no mentor, just us and a builder. So we got kind of scared about that, and we backed out of that. And then
Those are massive.
Yes, and looking back, the location, and now we know kind of what we're doing in general with the commercial space. We totally should have done it because we would have been making bank right now.
Because usually, I don't know, you went to a storage unit for whatever conference or class one time. So
I forgot what that number is called, but you see what basically like the density there is of the population in the area compared to how many other storage facilities are like in proximity. And I forgot there's a certain number where there's like a threshold where if it's above or below, it makes sense to build or not build, or in that area.
Right.
But the crazy part is that doesn't somebody buy you out of, like, once you get to like a certain capacity?
Oh yeah, so it's something like crazy where you can get like somebody like, for instance, like CubeSmart or any of those companies to basically, they kind of run the front end of it, and I don't know if they give you a loan or you get a loan through them, and then once you get to a certain amount of like occupancy of the storage units, then they buy you out at like once it's appraised higher. But basically, if you're doing like a value add, once you get to like the higher level of it, then you could sell like to that company. If that's what you want to do, if you don't want to hold it, or you could refinance and pull your equity out.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry. I don't know much about it, so I've never really looked into because I've never really looked into it. But let's talk about a little bit of the basics, because some people might not know what syndication even means.
Okay.
Right? It just sounds like a cool word, but like, what as a syndicator, what is it that you do?
As a syndicator, it's my job to go out and find apartment communities that financially make sense. What that means is I need to know what my expected return is. If I want an 8% return or a 10% return cash on cash every year, then I need to find an asset that meets those numbers. In addition to finding the asset, once I find it, then I also need to find the other team members in place who can help me make sure that asset runs appropriately. So that's bank financing, whether I'm going directly to a bank, not like Chase or Wells Fargo necessarily. They don't necessarily handle apartment, big commercial loans. It might be Hunt or Arbor. But if I don't know who to go to, I will find a mortgage broker who's experienced. They should have more leverage with these other commercial banks because of all the properties that they run through them.
Yeah.
So they should be able to get a better deal than if I were to go directly to one of these banks. So once I make sure financing is going to come through and I have a property management team that's willing to work with me, they also need to provide me a budget of what they think it will cost, what they think expenses will be, and make sure we're in alignment there, because that can kill you as well. If they say that they can run a property for a lot less than what maybe the current owner is running it at, you might want to get a second property management opinion just to make sure the understanding is there, what expenses are and what they aren't.
Just like when you're looking at contractor quotes, you always want to get 3 at least.
Right.
So you have like some sort of average, right?
Right.
Because if maybe the first one's going to be really high, then the second one's going to be low, and then you'll find a happy medium.
That's right.
So you get an idea of what it is. So as a syndicator, you just essentially just quarterback. Like you're putting everything together.
Yeah, you're bringing all the team in place. So if you're going it alone as a syndicator, there's money to be put down on these properties. So you need to make sure you have that money. There's money for due diligence and money that needs to go to the title company to go to the potential seller. And you just have to have money in play. And if you don't, then you need to bring in another partner who can help you with that aspect while you're working with all the other players. So my husband and I teach people, you don't have to have it all, you don't have to know it all. You don't even have to be really good at deal analysis and numbers, right? You can bring in other team members who lack what you don't have, but you do have to bring something to the table. You do have to be good at something. So if you are good at networking and you can meet all these brokers who can bring you great deals, and maybe you can go meet passive investors, or people who are just dying to get into something as a passive investment, great, you are a valuable asset. But bring somebody else in who knows how to analyze the deals really well. Bring somebody else in who has the money to put in up front. And then the three of you can go after these deals together as a sponsorship team.
Let's talk about like the funding aspect. So say you get an 80% loan from a bank, commercial loan, and then the other 20% you're raising from, private passive investors. Like what are you offering them? Is it, debt or equity? And then what's kind of like the split that you offer them? And then do you have a few big ones, or does everyone come in at like a certain minimum threshold of money that they invest with you, and then you pool them together, and then do you get a PPM for every deal?
Yes. So anytime you're raising money from other people, using other people's money, you really need to look at the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC rules. And for us to raise other people's money without being a licensed money raiser, we'll just use that term, you need to get together a PPM, a private placement memorandum. That basically tells the investor everything there is to know about the deal. It also scares the dickens out of them. That tells them all the things that could go wrong with that investment. You really shouldn't invest. This is risky business. They want to make sure that the passive investor truly understands that any investment is a risk and you know what you're getting yourself into. And as far as splits, we'll just say the typical split is 80-20, like you mentioned. There is a wide range of splits. We've seen people do 60-40, maybe even 50-50. But as long as the passive investor is okay with getting the returns that are promised, and they get the returns that they're promised, then both sides win. It really doesn't matter the split, as long as, again, both sides are happy with the agreement.
Yeah.
So let's go back to that just average 80-20 split. The passive investor may or may not get a pref or preferred return, which means through the cash flow of the property every month, let's just say they make $100,000, or let's make the number bigger. Let's say they get $1 million every month in cash flow. Well, you're first going to go and pay off all your debt and your expenses. Everything that's left over will go to the investors. 80% to the passive, 20% to the syndicator or syndicating team. If there's a preferred return, let's just say 8%, the passive investors get 8%, and if there's anything above that left over, maybe 2%, that 2% will go to the sponsorship team. Typically, when there's a preferred return, the split's a little different. It might be more of a 70-30. 30% to the sponsorship team, 70% to the passive investor team, but they're getting that preferred return before the sponsorship team gets even a dime. So if it doesn't perform, we get nothing, and we continue to work until we get the investment up to par. So there's other terms like a waterfall. So the more sophisticated investor understands waterfalls, the better you get the property to perform, the bigger percentage the sponsorship team will get along the way. So maybe a preferred return 8% to the passive investors, and maybe we will get 50-50 split after that of all the profits. And then if it performs even better after that, maybe we will get 60-40. So that's kind of a waterfall. The problem with presenting a waterfall to the average passive investor, since there's so many more people getting into syndication who are a little less educated in this industry, they don't understand waterfalls. It's a little too complicated, a little too over their head. Maybe they've never even heard of it. So they try to stick to deals that are just straight across the board, 80-20 or 70-30. That's easier to understand, right? But what we're finding is the longer we're into this, the more sophisticated passive investors we get, the more they want at least a preferred return. Well, a little bit more security for them. But again, with that also comes a little bit more on the backside to the sponsorship team. Maybe it's a 70-30 split because we still need to be paid for our efforts.
Right.
But they'll have at least their security of getting their at least 8%. Did I answer all of your questions?
Yeah. I guess just one that I know it's not really that prevalent in syndication or multifamily, but just kind of give some perspective. What would be the biggest reason why you would offer an equity return instead of a debt, like an interest rate for a loan for that portion that they're funding?
Yeah, so that question, quite honestly, would be better served by my husband, Mark, who's not here with us today. But my understanding, whether it's accurate or not, my understanding would be it would be like a shorter-term loan to the passive investor, right? So if I'm offering them just a debt, I can pay off that debt and they can be completely out of it, right? It's a shorter term loan. So maybe they want only a couple of years, almost like a hard money lender. That loan might be 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months, and they get their money, they get their returns, and they're out to their next investment. So there's benefit to that. Other than that, I don't know.
Did you have any follow-up questions about the financing? Because I kind of want to move into the education part.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so because this is a very it's such a there's so many moving parts, right?
Yeah.
It's not one of those industries that you can just kind of wholesaling, single-family houses. You can't just take a weekend course and be good at it, right? So it's you have to actually take some, not good at it, but at least
you
do it.
Right.
So when it comes to multifamily and syndication, what would you say, would you recommend people to obviously get educated, take a course or do some sort of seminar or find a mentor or...
Right. So as far as the education goes for apartment investing, you'll get a wide range of people out there trying to sell you into different programs, telling you that you can get in for no money down, which kind of is true, but you need to be careful of the people who tell you can get in for no money down. They also might tell you that you can buy your first property in 30 days or 90 days.
I feel like you can't even get the necessary stuff to do due diligence within the first 30 days.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You need to be careful what these people are promising you. It's just not realistic.
Even more those older owners who do all their accounting and paper.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's they got to find all those records and some.
Well, they're better because they feel like they have everything ready because they're I have my notepad right here and it has
but you know
10
what I
years
mean? there's just so much diligence that you have to do. Say you're buying like a 120 unit apartment, complex. It's
Right.
like there's so much stuff going on. In 30 days, you could barely get the stuff that you need to do your due diligence.
Right, and unless you have all the money yourself to bring to the table, well, it's going to take you a long time to build relationships with passive investors where they trust you enough to give you their money.
Right, because we're talking millions. We're not talking like 40,
Dear Lord,
60,
yes,
$80,000.
for sure. Like some of these investors might invest only $50,000, but that $50,000 might be all they have to their name. So you really want to take into consideration the passive investor's position. So again, we're going back to the minimum investment for them might be $50,000, it might be $100,000, it might even be $200,000 on some of these deals. The max we've taken as a minimum is $100,000, but some people still do put in $250,000 or $500,000 into one investment. So we really, it's a burden to take other people's money. It's different if you lose your own money.
Right.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
It sucks, but...
But when you lose other people's money, there's just such a stress about that. And it may not be your fault. It might be somebody else's fault who stole money from you, who maybe the property management company mismanaged and lost a bunch of money. But you are still the one who's responsible technically for losing their money. And it's a difficult position to be in.
So, I started asking about education because you mentioned in the podcast and you told me earlier that you guys have been teaching people how to do syndication.
Yeah.
How'd you guys get started on that? And if you could just talk about it a little bit more.
Sure. So how we got started with the education is we were part of another education platform before, and we've heard different things out there about different educators that we just felt that it was time for a new education source for people. My husband and I are very big on integrity and authenticity, and everything we say we're going to do. And we're not going to promise you the world, and then as soon as we get your money,
just out.
You get nothing after that. Thank you very much. Thanks for playing the game, right? But that's the mentality, is everybody's just so hungry to get people into their group or their education and grow fast. They're not thinking long-term play.
Right, but they grow fast in a year, and then once people find out that they're taking people's money, then that's it. Why would it just grow slowly and just build like a 10, 20-year-old business?
You would think so. But once a group gets so big and there's so many passive investors in a group, it makes it easier for syndicators to raise money as long as they're playing the game of whatever that educator says they are supposed to do, right? And as a new syndicator who doesn't really know how to go out and raise their own money from other sources other than this one location, it's a scary thing to leave groups like that. They want to stay where everything is easy and it's at least known.
Right.
So we wanted to create a group that was different. The culture is different. The culture of our group is very family-oriented. We consider our students our friends, and we invite them to go out on our date nights with us because we just want to be with our friends and our family. Yeah. So it's a completely different feel from the other groups that we were a part of or have heard about. So that was really the big driver for us to create Think Multifamily, is to be a group that was different and accessible.
When did you guys start it?
We started officially Think Multifamily back in 2016. Our first conference was the end of 2016. It took us a full year for different reasons to start our coaching program, where we started officially taking on students. Before then, my husband was just helping a lot of people for free on the side because, they would call us with questions, even if they were part of another coaching, mentoring program, who was, they aren't always as accessible, and we were always accessible and still are. So we decided to officially launch our coaching program last October, and it's gone really well. Our students are now closing on a bunch of deals, and they're happy, we're happy, and we're really happy with the community that we've built.
That's awesome.
And then, you teach syndication only, right?
We do, but if you're
business.
Yes, we do teach the entire business, which also sets us apart from our competition. We teach people that as a syndicator, you need to stand out from all the other syndicators or all the other people who are trying to also get passive investors' money. How are you going to do that? You need to brand and market yourself. You need to stand out. You need to be unique. You need to learn social media because that's where a lot of the marketing is taking place.
Yeah.
So we've helped some of our students create their own meetups so they can start getting their own investors through that. I've helped a few students with their social media. Maybe they are not on social media at all and they need to be.
Facebooks?
That's
Really?
right, exactly. So, I mean, because we're so big on social media now, it's just a natural part of our life.
Yeah.
But it isn't for everyone. They avoid it maybe for personal reasons because we all know that there's so much drama going on social media and they find value in their own life staying away from it.
Yeah. One of our partners recently got Facebook and he only has like 5 friends. Like just literally just our business partners and his wife.
And no profile
That's
picture.
it.
You know, and maybe you need to
But
have
he's
two.
like, I don't want to be on there. It's like,
Yeah, but again, for marketing purposes, because that's where a lot of the marketing is. It's
Right,
not
we do
picking up
the
the phone.
marketing.
Yes, yeah. So I just kind of tell some of our students, maybe you get 2 Facebook accounts. You get one for your very close friends and family, so you don't have to follow drama that you don't want to follow.
Right.
And you get one for business, and you just check it every once in a while. But the one thing I teach people about social media, if you're really trying to use it for business, you really do need to follow certain people. You can be strategic. You need to like and comment on posts and increase your engagement.
Not just, just posting, hey, I want this, I want this, I
Right.
want this,
You
I want
can't
this,
you
I
can't
want
just be
this.
like I need. It's like what can I add value to you? And maybe that's just commenting and liking their posts. But that's also a step to relationship building.
Yeah, I
People
mean-
might recognize you at events because you were engaging with their social media platform.
That's literally how our business has exploded over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Just off of Facebook. I mean, I think we've raised over 6 figures.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah,
Doing
easily.
just Facebook. Like
Yeah.
there was this one guy who just one time he messaged me on Facebook and he's like, hey, I've been kind of following what you've been doing for the last 8 years
Wow.
or whatever. I've had a Facebook for a while, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And then he's like, hey, I want to do deals with you guys. He's like, I got, I don't know, however much money he had. I don't want to say. And then let's do a deal together, just
Cool.
like that.
That's awesome.
I haven't seen him in like 7-8 years,
Yeah.
So just literally from the power of Facebook. I mean, Matt's huge in that thing. He already maxed his amount of friends that he needs.
Let's do a fan page now or a business page.
Yeah.
Or what do you call it? Public figure.
Public figure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're huge on that. So I mean, we get the power of being on Facebook, and some people don't get it, and we're like, dude, like, it works.
It does. You have to be strategic and time block so you're not on there 5 hours a day.
But you also got to put some family things here and there,
You
comment
do.
on other people's things, just to seem like a real person.
People want to see that you're a real person so they can really connect with you.
Yeah.
So the one thing about social media, because we try to stand out different from other people out there, we try to create balance with our students. Like, it's not all about the money. Let's not just chase that dollar, the dollar on the end of the stick, because that stick is always moving.
Yeah.
You're never going to be satisfied in life if that's all you're chasing is the money. But there's a lot of people out there that appear to be that way. So we tell them not to be flashy on social media. You might have a really expensive house, you might have a Lambo, but don't be
post it.
flashy about it.
Yeah, that's how you get
Right.
robbed too.
Well, yeah, like you might
No,
draw more
seriously.
people that way because other people also want those things. But you don't need to be flashy. Be successful and be satisfied. Have your significance in who you are and what you do and what you provide to the world without having to put everything you own on social media for everybody to see, because you're not going to really get your significance that way.
Right.
Don't be flashy, be classy.
That's right. Be classy.
Yeah, one of our mentors, I mean, you couldn't tell that she's done over 500 flips and she's just way up there.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at her, she's not flashy at all. She doesn't want to be flashy.
Right.
She kind of looks like a
She's
homeless person.
She's like, I was like that, and people try to sue me. They would.
Yes.
Yeah.
The more successful you are, the more people see you as deep pockets, and they will sue you for anything
nothing.
and everything. And the thing with lawsuits is, you think that just because you are if you are on the right side of the law, you think you're going to win the case.
Yeah.
But most cases do not even go to trial because it's drawn out for so long, a year and a half, 2 years for every case, even something really small. You are paying tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of legal fees. At what point do you say enough? At what point did they say enough?
Right.
Some attorneys even come in and take your case for free because you're going to sue somebody with deep pockets. You might not have to pay them anything, but they know they're so good at their job of pressuring people for these cases that they'll get like half of whatever it is they get.
Personal injury attorneys do that?
Yes. I mean, it's crazy. So, I mean, we've even had attorneys tell us, well, you might just want to pay them something, the blackmail fee, just to get out of this. And we've heard other people the same thing. They might pay somebody $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 just to go away because they know how long this can tie up. It's not just your financial resources, it's your emotional resources and your time. And you have to fly to wherever that case is, and you might be gone for a couple of days at a time doing depositions. It's a time suck and it's emotional drain.
Also, if people find out, it slanders your name, and they don't know what actually happened, and
it
just
they
brings
just
negativity around
for
you.
some reason, but they don't know that it's fake.
That's right. And the problem with when you settle, sometimes those settlements also come with a gag order, which means you can no longer talk about that case. You can no longer clear your name legally. So you have to be careful with that as well. Since we're kind of talking a little bit about the legal aspect, I wanted to go back to social media. And one thing that I've been seeing people do that's illegal, and they really need to be careful because of the SEC, or the Security and Exchange Commission, which is a federal-based organization.
Asking for money online?
Exactly, they do. They say that they're trying to raise money for a deal and they're looking for investors, but they don't specifically say that they're only going after accredited investors. Accredited investors are people who make they have $1 million in their net worth. They make $200,000 a year and have done so in the last couple of years and are expected to do so for the next 2 or 3 years. Or if they're married, they make $300,000 a year. So that is the term accredited investor. The government doesn't care as much if an accredited investor loses their money. They believe they have enough money to go on and survive, and they at least should know what they're doing, right?
If you got a net worth of $1 million, you should know what the hell you're doing.
Right, exactly. But if you're not accredited, they're trying to protect the non-accredited investor who might be conned into an investment, or they're giving up their last $10,000 or $50,000 into an investment that they don't really understand. So that is one goal of the PPM, is to make sure that all of your investors across the board understand the full risk and rewards of the investment.
So what's the correct way to say it? That you're just pursuing accredited investors?
Yes. But you've got to only take accredited investors on that deal. It is a deal-by-deal basis. You cannot mix accredited and non-accredited investors on one deal if you're advertising. So I cannot post on Facebook that I'm looking for investors. You can be strategic. You can be, hey, I'm excited. I just got this 100-unit of property, and we're starting due diligence tomorrow. The more people see you on Facebook, what you're doing, if they're interested in what you're doing, they might approach you. But you can't pitch it in a way that you're trying to raise money or you're looking for passive investors, because that is illegal if you're open to the 506B, which means you're taking both investors. 506C means you're taking just accredited investors.
So let's. Do you have a seminar coming up for your? Because you only do it in Dallas, right?
Right now, we're only doing it in Dallas. We are looking at branching out into right now Atlanta as well. So yes, my next 2-day conference is September 22nd and 23rd in the Dallas area, and it's called FIRE.
Nice. Financially
Independent, Retire Early.
Nice.
Yes.
And you guys are going to be teaching syndication and this whole thing.
We will. We're going to have breakout sessions. So if certain topics interest you, maybe you're more just a passive investor and you want to learn more of that tract, then we'll have different breakout sessions that will interest you. If you are a syndicator or want to syndicate your first apartment deal or your second or your third, then we'll have breakout sessions that are more interesting to you there.
Because you guys are up to, you said 3,000 units?
We have
now?
over 3,000 units now, and we have more in the works right now.
Nice.
So it's a constant flow, right? Getting that first deal is really important. And after that,
Crazy.
things kind of just start coming to you.
We first met like 500 people who had 500 units. We're like, damn. Then it was like 1,600. Then it was like 2,000. And now it's 3,000.
Well, syndication helps you go bigger faster.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You don't have to go it alone. You don't have to wait on your own resources to turn over. You build a team and you bring something to the table and let your team members bring the other things that you're lacking.
Yeah, definitely. Now, before we go into the last part, because I think we got about 20 minutes left here. Before we go into the questions, I think when I went up to you the other day at the bar, you were reading your book's manuscript.
Yeah.
So you guys are writing a book? If you
We
can kind
are.
of talk about that and what it's about and when it's coming out, if you know, and all that.
Sure. I don't know exactly when it's coming out. Things always take a lot longer than you expect them to.
Yeah.
But this particular book is for passive investors. So I'm hoping that it'll come out in the next month or so. We'll have an electronic version and a hard copy version. It'll take a little longer for the hard copy version to come out.
Are you guys doing like self-publishing on Amazon, or do you guys have like a book deal, or how are you doing it?
I don't know yet. So we've written in compilation books before. So we do have a relationship with the publisher. I might just go with him and have him help us publish it so I don't have to do it all on my own. So writing in a compilation book is a little easier, right? That publisher takes care of all that back end stuff and we just kind of write our section.
Yeah.
And it gets your name out, and that was kind of fun. It's a good intro and it kind of gets your feet wet in the book writing space.
Yeah.
Now we're ready for our own.
So this one, you said it's about...
It's about apartment investing, specifically from the passive investor's viewpoint.
Okay. And it'll walk you through what parts of...
Yeah, it walks you through kind of the basics of apartment investing, the rules of thumb, looking at the legal documents, what you need to understand, what your rights are. If you're asked to sign on a loan, should you, can you? If you want to be straight out passive investor, what it looks like. If you want to be a passive investor that also has a little bit of a sponsorship equity in the deal, what does that look like? To be slightly active but not fully active. So we kind of just take them through the process.
Cool. That's awesome. Matt, do you want to go into the questions, or did you have other questions?
Another question earlier. What's the competition like at the level that you're playing at the multifamily? Because obviously there's less people that can do it or think that they can do it, but there's also people who know how to. Like, what kind of competition have you seen out there as far as like getting deals?
It's bloody waters.
Yeah.
Especially in the major marketplaces. There's a lot of competition everywhere, especially the more educators that come into play like us. We're teaching people how to go out and do it and be successful. There's just more players in the game. We're really teaching people how to compete with us, which is fine because we like to see other people successful as well. But you just have to keep at it. So back in the day, a few years ago, you might go after 5 or 6 deals and maybe you'll get one. But now you really have to analyze about 100 deals. You might find maybe 3 that make financial sense for you and your investors, and you might get one.
That's
So
literally
it's a lot
our
more work.
numbers right now. I would say the average, we look between 70 and 100.
Yeah.
Then I narrowed it down to about 10.
Yeah.
And I make offers on 3. And then we end up getting 1.
Yeah. Well, and the thing for us is you can't just say, hey, I'm going to look at anything from 50 units to 400 units, because that's humongous. And you're going to get burned out so fast because you're not going to find anything, because your search, your niche would be so wide. You really have to narrow down exactly what you're looking for, and what you're looking for is what your passive investors want.
Right.
Not necessarily what you want or where you want to live, because that won't make financial sense for you unless you want a 3 or 4 or 5% return. Then maybe you can consider that. So that's one thing people really need to keep in mind is what's good for your passive investors. What do they want?
What areas would you say are best for buying multifamily apartments?
Yeah, so definitely anything that's landlord friendly and where there are jobs flowing.
The Rust Belt, or like
Bible Belt or
whatever they call it. It's
that's
like
kind of
mostly
where we're
red
sticking.
states.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're sticking to right now. We own in Dallas, Atlanta, Memphis, and Alabama right now, and we have students who are also looking in the Florida, Tampa-ish area, and Ohio has a couple of really good markets. So just because we don't want to live in the cold doesn't mean other people don't want to live in the cold, because we grew up in the Midwest.
We do.
That's why we like the warm states,
Yeah.
So just there's a lot of different aspects
So
that
say
go into choosing a market.
The landlord-friendly, a market. Because usually these bigger apartment complexes are like in a smaller town, right? They're not going to be like in a huge metropolitan area like Chicago, but maybe...
Apartments?
Right.
Oh, no. I mean, they'd be everywhere.
Right.
So you just have to look, again, what kind of returns do you want? How much value add? How much risk? Maybe you want to be somewhere in downtown Chicago and it's kind of a rough area. But if you're on the line, like you're starting to see some development come through, people are starting to change and investors are coming through, the city's starting to invest money in that area. Maybe you buy a property that's right next to where all the other development's going and you start stretching out that line of what's considered the nice area versus the bad area.
So you want to go on before the curve, right? Before everybody
that
starts.
Would be the
before
ideal,
the cranes go
right, that would be the ideal situation. But with higher risk, right, you need to understand that there could be greater rewards, but it is also a higher risk.
How are you finding most of your deals now?
We go mostly through our relationships with our brokers all over the country. So because we're located in Dallas, we have a lot of good relationships with brokers there. If we're interested in another market, we simply ask them for who they might have a connection with, maybe somebody in their firm already, and they'll make the connection for us, and automatically we have credibility with that broker now because they know our experience, our track record, and we've been referred.
Let's go. So let's go into the question. Let's just do 5. We're getting close to the hour.
So let me start off with this. What was your favorite failure and one that set you up for future success?
Oh my goodness.
Favorite or apparent failure?
Yeah. So, the thing that set us up for future success, created Think Multifamily. So like I said before, we were in a position we were being mentored by somebody that things were happening in a way that we did not agree with. Because of that, we chose to no longer work with that mentor, and other people came to us also asking for another option for a mentor and another community to be a part of. It was an extremely painful process because when you're a part of a group, sometimes the groups almost oust you, like you're no longer part of our group, we can't talk to you, we can no longer do business with you, you're not part of our cult. So we kind of lost friends in that situation, right? It was extremely painful. Friends that I've been friends with for many years, even prior to it, like would no longer either see me or take their pictures with me publicly because they didn't want to get it back to that mentor. It was crazy. So, but because of that process that we went through, we were that much more determined to create something new, something better, something higher integrity for other people out there so that they had a choice. So I think Multifamily was born from that pain.
What's your best hiring tip or secret
Oh, dear Lord.
for property managers?
Oh, for property managers. Okay, I thought we were going the employee route.
Oh, I guess
Just be specific, just for...
Okay.
Either or both.
For property managers, my best tip definitely is don't go with necessarily the cheaper one. We've experienced hiring the cheaper one and who had a really good reputation in the marketplace. A lot of other people were using them as well, but they were growing so fast. They just were not keeping up with all their properties and all the staff, and they weren't making sure they were hiring educated staff. So you've got to manage your property management company. That's also the role of a syndicator, is to be an asset manager.
Well, okay, so what are some questions that you would ask them, though, just to make sure that they're like the right property manager for you? Or like maybe some specific questions.
You definitely want to make sure that you mesh personally, that they understand the expenses for that marketplace. It would definitely help if they're also managing other properties in that marketplace, and the other properties they're managing aren't their own, right? Because if they're managing properties in that area that they own, that staff is going to be designated almost 100% to their properties over our own properties.
Yours is going to be second fiddle to their properties.
That's right. You want to make sure they're not competing in the same marketplace that you are buying and that they're working for you in.
If you had the chance to start over, what would you do differently?
Well, when we first started, we started at 1 to 4 units at a time, right? But we were, I'm aging myself, but we were pre-internet. We didn't know about the education out there, even free education online to get started. We didn't know about mentors or anybody that would walk alongside of us. So I would definitely start with a mentor so that you can do things right from the beginning and learn from their mistakes and not have to make all the mistakes on your own.
What is one thing that you find to be true that most people would disagree with?
That you really need to stick with your value system. Anytime that money is involved, lines become fuzzy. They become gray, and people might end up doing things maybe that they otherwise wouldn't. It's hard to go into details without giving examples, because I don't want to blast anybody, but you need to make sure you know where your value system stands, because money isn't the end all.
Why do you do what you do? What gets you through the tough times?
Because we see the difference that we're making in other people's lives and working with families and how it's changing their lives as well. So it's difficult because we do work a lot right now. And that is really, honestly, the only thing that keeps us going is knowing why we're doing it.
Okay, last one. What habits helped make you successful?
I think just the mindset, right? Because you can get, like, things aren't going my way and it's woe is me. But if you train your mindset of it's a fresh, brand new day, I'm going to tackle this thing. It really is a mindset shift every single day. And when you feel yourself feeling beat up because things aren't happening as fast as you want them to, you have to be in control of the way you think. You have to reset your goals for the day. You have to change your mindset and stay positive. That's the only way you're going to keep your energy up and keep going.
Awesome. Thank you. Where can people find you and your courses, your book, and all
Sure.
that?
People can find us at thinkmultifamily.com. Like you're thinking about something, thinkmultifamily.com. And we have online training, we have group coaching, we have events, we have additional resources, all online.
Awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, guys. And that's it for another episode of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. One last thing before you head off, though. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us your thoughts on iTunes. It would really mean a lot and help us reach more people. You can also find us on Facebook at Profits Over Wages Podcast, as well as on Instagram and YouTube. Until next time.